Billionaire orders his favorite meal, but Black Waitress slips him a note that changes his life. Marcus Wellington adjusted his gold cufflinks as he stepped out of his black Rolls-Royce. The autumn breeze carried the scent of expensive cologne and possibility through downtown Chicago. At 45, Marcus had everything money could buy. His tech empire spanned 3 continents. His penthouse overlooked Lake Michigan, and his bank account had more zeros than most people could count. But tonight, Marcus wasn't thinking about his billions. He was thinking about his favorite meal at Giuseppe's, the small Italian restaurant tucked away on Roosevelt Street. It was the same place he had been coming to for 15 years, ever since he was just another struggling entrepreneur with big dreams and empty pockets. The restaurant held memories. It was where he had signed his first major contract on a napkin, where he had celebrated his company going public, where he had mourned the loss of his parents 3 years ago. Giuseppe's wasn't just a restaurant to Marcus. It was home. As he pushed through the heavy wooden doors, the familiar warmth embraced him. The walls were lined with black and white photographs of old Chicago, and the soft lighting cast a golden glow over the checkered tablecloths. The smell of fresh basil and garlic filled the air, instantly relaxing his shoulders. "Mr. Wellington." Giuseppe himself appeared from behind the bar, his arms spread wide in greeting. The elderly Italian man had owned this restaurant for 30 years, and his genuine smile never failed to warm Marcus's heart. "Your usual table is ready, my friend." Marcus smiled and followed Giuseppe to a corner booth, the same one he had sat in countless times before. As he settled into the worn leather seat, he noticed something different. Instead of Maria, the usual waitress who had served him for years, a young black woman approached his table. She was probably in her mid-20s, with natural hair pulled back in a neat bun and eyes that seemed to hold depths of experience beyond her years. Her name tag read Jasmine. Despite the professional smile on her face, Marcus could see something in her expression. Determination, perhaps. Or maybe it was worry. "Good evening, Mr. Wellington," Jasmine said, her voice steady and polite. "I'm Jasmine, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Maria had to leave early for a family emergency, but she made sure to tell me exactly what you like." Marcus nodded, impressed by her professionalism. "Thank you, Jasmine. I'll have my usual then. The seafood risotto with extra Parmesan, a Caesar salad, and a glass of the 2015 Barolo." "Of course, sir. I'll get that started for you right away." Jasmine scribbled down the order, then hesitated for just a moment before walking away. Marcus didn't think much of it at the time. As he waited for his meal, Marcus pulled out his phone and began scrolling through emails. His company was in the middle of acquiring a smaller tech firm, and there were dozens of legal documents that needed his attention. The familiar buzz of business consumed his thoughts. 20 minutes later, Jasmine returned with a Caesar salad and wine. She placed them down carefully, her movements precise and practiced. "Your risotto will be out in just a few more minutes, Mr. Wellington." "Thank you," Marcus replied without looking up from his phone. Another email had just come in from his lawyers about the acquisition. The numbers were staggering, even by his standards. $50 million for a company that barely had 20 employees. Jasmine lingered for just a moment, as if she wanted to say something, but then thought better of it and walked away. Marcus was too engrossed in his emails to notice. The Caesar salad was perfect, as always. The crisp romaine lettuce, mixed with Giuseppe's homemade dressing and fresh croutons, reminded Marcus why he loved this place. It wasn't the fanciest restaurant in Chicago, but it had something that money couldn't buy. Heart. His risotto arrived 15 minutes later. Jasmine placed the steaming plate in front of him with a soft smile. "Seafood risotto with extra Parmesan, just as you like it. Is there anything else I can get for you right now?" Marcus looked up from his phone for the first time since ordering. "This looks perfect, thank you. Actually, could you bring me another glass of wine? This Barolo is exceptional tonight." "Absolutely, sir." Jasmine turned to leave, then paused and turned back. Mr. Wellington, I hope you don't mind me saying, but you seem to really love coming here. I've heard Giuseppe mention that you've been a regular for many years." Marcus smiled, setting down his fork. 15 years, actually. This place is special to me. It's where I learned that the best things in life aren't always the most expensive ones. Something flickered across Jasmine's face at those words. She nodded slowly. "That's beautiful, sir. I'll get that wine for you." As Marcus ate his risotto, savoring each creamy spoonful, he couldn't help but think about how much his life had changed since he first walked into Giuseppe's. Back then, he was 29 years old with a computer science degree and an idea for a software company. He had exactly $300 to his name and a determination that burned brighter than the Chicago sun. Giuseppe had been the one to give him his first real break. When Marcus couldn't afford to pay for his meal one particularly difficult evening, the kind restaurant owner had let him work in the kitchen washing dishes to cover his bill. That small act of kindness had meant everything to a young man who was starting to doubt his dreams. Now Marcus could buy the entire restaurant 10 times over without making a dent in his fortune. But he never forgot where he came from, and he never forgot the people who helped him along the way. That's why he made sure to tip generously, and why he insisted on Giuseppe never changing the menu or the decor. Some things were more valuable than money. As he finished his meal, Marcus noticed that the restaurant was beginning to empty out. It was nearly 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and most of the dinner crowd had already gone home. Only a few tables remained occupied, mostly by couples sharing quiet conversations over candlelight. Jasmine approached his table with his check. "How was everything tonight, Mr. Wellington?" "Absolutely perfect, as always." Marcus reached for his wallet, preparing to leave his usual generous tip. Giuseppe's never disappoints. "I'm so glad to hear that," Jasmine said, setting the check down on the table. As she did, Marcus noticed that there was something else underneath it, a folded piece of paper. His eyebrows furrowed slightly as he picked up the note. "What's this?" Jasmine's professional composure seemed to waver for just a moment. It's something I hoped you might read when you have a moment, sir. Nothing urgent, just something I thought you might find interesting." Marcus looked at her curiously, then at the folded note in his hands. In all his years of dining at Giuseppe's, nothing like this had ever happened before. He was intrigued. "Thank you," he said simply, tucking the note into his jacket pocket. He left $200 cash on the table, far more than necessary for a $60 meal, and stood to leave. "Mr. Wellington," Jasmine called softly as he reached for his coat. He turned back to her. "Thank you for being so kind tonight, and I hope you'll consider what's in that note." There was something in her voice that made Marcus pause, a vulnerability that hadn't been there before. He nodded slowly. "Have a good evening, Jasmine." As Marcus walked out into the cool Chicago night, he couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. The note in his pocket seemed to burn with possibility, but he decided to wait until he got home to read it. His curiosity could wait a few more minutes. The drive home to his penthouse usually took 20 minutes, but tonight Marcus found himself taking the long way. The city lights blurred past his window as his mind wandered back to Jasmine and the mysterious note. What could a waitress possibly want to tell a billionaire? He had received thousands of letters over the years from people asking for money, for investments, for help with their dreams. Most of them ended up in the trash, filtered out by his assistants before they ever reached his desk. But this felt different somehow. There had been something in Jasmine's eyes that reminded him of himself 15 years ago. That same desperate hope mixed with fierce determination. When Marcus finally arrived at his penthouse, he poured himself a scotch and sat down in his leather chair overlooking the city. The lights of Chicago stretched out below him like a constellation of dreams and ambitions. Somewhere out there, thousands of people were working late into the night, chasing their own versions of success. He pulled the note from his pocket and unfolded it carefully. The paper was simple, probably torn from an order pad, and the handwriting was neat but hurried, as if the words had been written quickly during a brief break from work. "Dear Mr. Wellington," it began, "I hope you will forgive me for reaching out to you this way. I know it's unconventional, and I'm probably breaking every rule in the customer service handbook. But sometimes life forces you to take chances, even when you're scared. My name is Jasmine Collins, and I've been working at Giuseppe's for 3 months now. It's my second job. During the day, I work as a teacher's aide at Lincoln Elementary School in the South Side. I love working with children, and I love Giuseppe's too. Both jobs barely pay enough to cover my rent, but they feed my soul in ways that money can't measure. I'm writing to you because I've heard Giuseppe talk about you many times. He says you're not just a successful businessman, but a good man who remembers where he came from. He told me that you started with nothing and built an empire through hard work and determination. That gives me hope. Here's the thing, Mr. Wellington. I have a dream that keeps me up at night. I want to open a community center in my neighborhood, a place where kids can go after school to do their homework, learn computer skills, play sports, and just be safe. Right now, too many children in my area have nowhere to go when school ends. They end up on the streets, getting into trouble because they don't have any other options. I've been working on a business plan for 2 years. I've researched grants, talked to community leaders, and even found a building that would be perfect. It's an old warehouse that used to be a manufacturing plant, but it's been empty for 5 years. The owner wants to sell it for $50,000, which might as well be $50 million for someone like me. I know you probably get requests like this all the time. I know you must think I'm just another person looking for a handout, but I'm not asking for charity, Mr. Wellington. I'm asking for a chance to prove that investing in communities can change lives. If you gave me the money to buy that building, I would work day and night to turn it into something amazing. I would name it the Wellington Community Center in honor of your generosity. I would make sure that every child who walked through those doors learned about the importance of dreams, hard work, and giving back to others. I've attached a copy of my business plan to the back of this letter. It includes projected costs, potential revenue streams, and letters of support from parents and teachers in the community. I've thought of everything, Mr. Wellington. I just need someone to believe in me the way Giuseppe believed in you all those years ago. I understand if you can't help me. I understand if this letter ends up in the trash with hundreds of others. But I had to try, because sometimes one person's kindness can change everything. Thank you for taking the time to read this. And thank you for being the kind of person who still eats at places like Giuseppe's, even though you could afford to eat anywhere in the world. With hope and respect, Jasmine Collins. P.S. I've been watching you come into the restaurant for months, and I can see that food isn't the only reason you love Giuseppe's. It's the connection, the memories, the feeling of belonging somewhere. That's exactly what I want to create for the kids in my neighborhood. Marcus read the letter twice, then set it down on his coffee table and leaned back in his chair. He stared out at the city lights for a long time, his scotch growing warm in his glass. 15 years ago, he had been in Jasmine's shoes. He had been the one with big dreams and empty pockets, hoping that someone would take a chance on him. The only difference was that he had never been brave enough to approach a billionaire in a restaurant and hand them a note. He had been too proud, too scared of rejection. But Jasmine had done exactly that. She had taken a risk that could have gotten her fired, could have embarrassed her, could have ruined her evening. She had done it anyway because she believed in her dream more than she feared failure. Marcus picked up the business plan that had been folded behind the letter. It was impressive. Jasmine had clearly done her homework. She had researched successful community centers in other cities, identified potential funding sources, and even created a 5-year projection showing how the center could become self-sustaining through programs and partnerships with local businesses. The numbers were solid. The need was clearly documented, and the passion behind every page was undeniable. As Marcus read through the plan, He found himself thinking about his own success. Yes, he had worked hard. Yes, he had made smart decisions and taken calculated risks. But he had also been lucky. Lucky to be born with advantages that many people didn't have. Lucky to meet the right people at the right time. Lucky to live in a country where dreams like his were even possible. With great fortune came great responsibility. He had always believed. But somehow, over the years, he had gotten so caught up in making more money that he had forgotten about giving it away in meaningful ways. He donated to charities. Of course, his accountant made sure of that for tax purposes. But when was the last time he had personally invested in someone's dream the way Giuseppe had invested in his? Marcus pulled out his phone and did something he hadn't done in years. He Googled Lincoln Elementary School on the south side of Chicago. What he found made his chest tighten. The school was in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. Test scores were below average. The building was old and needed repairs. Many of the students came from single-parent homes where money was scarce and opportunities were even scarcer. He found photos of school online. Children with bright smiles despite their worn clothing. Teachers who looked exhausted but determined. A playground with broken equipment and cracked pavement. These were the kids Jasmine wanted to help. These were the children who needed a safe place to go after school, who needed computers to learn on, who needed adults who believed in their potential. Marcus thought about his own childhood. He had grown up in a middle-class suburb with parents who supported his dreams. He had access to computers, books, tutors when he needed them. He had never wondered where his next meal would come from or whether he would be safe walking home from school. Not every child was so fortunate. Marcus made a decision that would have surprised his younger self. He put down his phone, finished his scotch, and went to bed. But he didn't sleep much that night. His mind was too busy making plans. The next morning, Marcus did something he hadn't done in 5 years. He cleared his entire schedule. He told his assistant to cancel all his meetings and hold all his calls. Then he got in his car and drove to the south side of Chicago. He found Lincoln Elementary School easily enough. It was exactly as depressing as the photos had suggested. The building was old brick with windows that needed replacing. The playground was small and surrounded by a chain-link fence. But despite its obvious need for investment, Marcus could see something else. Hope. Children were playing during recess, their laughter carrying across the concrete yard. Teachers stood watchfully nearby, clearly caring about their students despite the challenges they faced. There was life here. There was potential. Marcus parked across the street and watched for a while. He saw Jasmine arrive for work, walking quickly up the front steps with a bag full of supplies. She looked different in her daytime clothes, more casual, but still professional. Still determined. After 20 minutes of observation, Marcus drove to the address that Jasmine had mentioned in her letter. The old warehouse wasn't hard to find. It was a large, solid building with good bones, but obvious neglect. The windows were boarded up, and weeds grew through cracks in the parking lot. But Marcus could see the potential. The building was big enough to house multiple programs. It had loading docks that could be converted into sports areas. The high ceilings would be perfect for a gymnasium. With the right investment, it could be transformed into exactly what Jasmine envisioned. He made some phone calls from his car. By the end of the day, he had spoken with the building's owner, a structural engineer, and 2 construction contractors. The warehouse was solid and could be renovated for approximately $200,000. Add in equipment, furnishings, and operating expenses for the first year, and the total investment would be around $400,000. For Marcus, $400,000 was pocket change. He spent more than that on art for his penthouse. But for Jasmine and the children she wanted to help, it would be life-changing. That evening, Marcus returned to Giuseppe's. He arrived earlier than usual, hoping to catch Jasmine before the dinner rush began. Giuseppe greeted him with his usual enthusiasm, but seemed surprised to see him 2 nights in a row. "Marcus, my friend. 2 times this week. What's the occasion? Just felt like good Italian food again. Marcus replied with a smile. Is Jasmine working tonight? Yes. She just started her shift. Such a good girl, that one. Works so hard. Always on time. Very polite with the customers. You want your usual table. Actually, Giuseppe, could I sit at table 12 tonight? I'd like to try a different view. Giuseppe raised an eyebrow, but nodded. Table 12 was in Jasmine's section. When Jasmine saw Marcus sit down at one of her tables, her face went pale. She approached slowly, clearly nervous about what he might say about the note. Mr. Wellington, she said quietly, I didn't expect to see you again so soon. Marcus smiled warmly. Hello, Jasmine. I was hoping we could talk when you have a moment. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her order pad. Of course, sir. Would you like your usual meal first? Actually, let's skip dinner for now. I read your letter, Jasmine. All of it, including your business plan. Jasmine's eyes widened. She glanced around the restaurant, clearly worried about having this conversation in front of other customers and her boss. Don't worry, Marcus said gently. Giuseppe knows I'm here to talk to you. I already spoke with him. Why don't you sit down? Jasmine hesitated for a moment, then slid into the booth across from him. Her professional composure was gone now, replaced by raw nervousness and hope. I want to ask you a few questions, Marcus continued, and I want you to be completely honest with me. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Why did you give me that letter? You could have lost your job. You could have embarrassed yourself. Why take that risk? Jasmine took a deep breath. Because I've been thinking about those kids for 2 years, Mr. Wellington. Every day at the school, I see children with so much potential and so few opportunities. I see 8-year-olds who are already giving up on their dreams because no one has ever told them that dreams can come true. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. I've applied for grants. I've talked to banks. I've even tried crowdfunding online. Nothing worked. I was running out of options, and I was starting to think that maybe I was just being naive. Maybe community centers only work in movies. But then you decided to approach me. Giuseppe told me your story one day when we were slow. He said you started with nothing and never forgot where you came from. He said you still eat the same meal you ordered when you were broke, because it reminds you of who you used to be. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. I thought maybe, just maybe, you would understand what it feels like to have a dream that everyone else thinks is impossible. Marcus leaned forward. Tell me about the kids, Jasmine. Tell me why this matters so much to you. For the next hour, Jasmine told Marcus stories that broke his heart and filled him with hope at the same time. She talked about Marcus Jr., a 9-year-old named after the billionaire himself, who was brilliant at math but had no computer at home to practice his skills. She described Keisha, a 10-year-old who wrote beautiful poetry but had nowhere quiet to work on her writing after school. She talked about Kevin, whose mother worked 3 jobs and couldn't afford after-school care, so he spent his afternoons alone in an empty apartment. She mentioned Destiny, who dreamed of becoming a doctor but had never met anyone who had gone to college. These kids aren't statistics, Mr. Wellington, Jasmine said, her passion evident in every word. They're individuals with unique gifts and dreams. They just need someone to believe in them and give them the tools to succeed. Marcus listened to every word, remembering his own childhood and all the advantages he had taken for granted. When Jasmine finished speaking, they sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Finally, Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a check. He had written it that afternoon after visiting the warehouse. He slid it across the table to Jasmine. This should be enough to buy the building and get your community center started, he said quietly. Jasmine looked down at the check and gasped. It was made out to her for $500,000. Mr. Wellington, I can't, this is too much. She stammered, staring at the check as if it might disappear. It's exactly the right amount, Marcus said firmly. But I have conditions. Jasmine looked up at him, hope and fear battling in her expression. First, I want to be involved, not as a silent partner, but as someone who helps you make decisions and ensures the center succeeds. I have experience building organizations, and I want to share that with you. She nodded eagerly. Second, I want you to promise me that you'll never forget why you're doing this. Success can change people, Jasmine. Don't let it change you. I promise, she whispered. And third, Marcus smiled, I want you to name at the Collins Community Center, not the Wellington Community Center. This is your dream, not mine. I'm just lucky enough to help make it happen. Tears streamed down Jasmine's face now. She tried to speak, but couldn't find words. There's one more thing, Marcus continued. I'd like you to consider leaving your job here at the restaurant and working full-time on the community center. I'll pay you a salary that's more than you're making at both your jobs combined. This project deserves your complete attention. Jasmine finally found her voice. Why? She asked through her tears. Why would you do all this for someone you barely know? Marcus thought about the question for a long moment. 15 years ago, Giuseppe took a chance on a broke young man with big dreams. He didn't have to do that. He could have just told me to come back when I had money. But he saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. He paused, looking around the restaurant that had meant so much to his journey. Last night, when I read your letter, I realized that I had become so focused on making money that I had forgotten the most important part of success, using it to lift others up. Marcus reached across the table and gently placed his hand over Jasmine's. You reminded me of who I used to be, Jasmine. And more importantly, you showed me who I still want to be. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the main room of the Collins Community Center, watching as children filled the space with laughter and energy. The old warehouse had been completely transformed. There was a computer lab with 20 new machines, a library filled with books, a gymnasium with a full basketball court, and quiet study areas where kids could do their homework. Jasmine had exceeded every expectation. She had recruited volunteer teachers, partnered with local colleges to provide tutoring services, and even started a small urban garden where children could learn about nutrition and responsibility. The center served over 200 children every day. Test scores at Lincoln Elementary had already begun to improve. Parents reported that their children were more excited about learning and more confident in their abilities. Marcus had kept his promise to stay involved. He visited the center twice a week, sometimes helping with homework, sometimes just talking to the kids about their dreams. He discovered that mentoring young people was more rewarding than any business deal he had ever closed. Tonight was special, though. It was the center's grand opening celebration, and the entire community had come out to show their support. Local news crews were there to cover the story. The mayor had even stopped by to congratulate Jasmine and Marcus on their partnership. But the best part for Marcus was watching Jasmine in action. She moved through the crowd with confidence and grace, talking to parents, hugging children, and coordinating volunteers. She had grown into her role as the center's director, and her passion for helping others had never dimmed. Mr. Wellington, a small voice called out. Marcus looked down to see Marcus Jr., the 9-year-old math was Jasmine had told him about. Will you help me with my computer program? I'm trying to make a game, but I can't get the character to jump properly. Marcus grinned and ruffled the boy's hair. Of course, Marcus. Lead the way. As they walked toward the computer lab, Marcus felt a deep sense of satisfaction that had nothing to do with profit margins or stock prices. This was what success really meant. Not the money in his bank account or the cars in his garage, but the opportunity to change lives and create hope where none had existed before. Later that evening, after the celebration had ended and the last volunteer had gone home, Marcus and Jasmine sat on the front steps of the community center. The building glowed with warm light from within, a beacon of hope in a neighborhood that had seen too little of it. I have something for you, Jasmine said, pulling a folded piece of paper from her purse. "It's from the kids." Marcus unfolded the paper to find a hand-drawn card covered with signatures and messages. "Thank you for believing in us," one child had written. "You're the best rich person ever," said another. "I want to be like you when I grow up," declared a third. But it was the message at the bottom, written in Jasmine's neat handwriting, that brought tears to his eyes. "Thank you for showing me that sometimes angels come disguised as billionaires who eat seafood risotto. Love, all of us at the Collins Community Center." Marcus folded the card carefully and put it in his jacket pocket, right where Jasmine's original note had been 6 months earlier. "You know," he said quietly, "I thought I was helping you that night at Giuseppe's, but it turns out you were helping me." Jasmine smiled. "Sometimes that's how the best partnerships work. We help each other become who we're meant to be." As Marcus drove home that night, he thought about how much his life had changed since reading a simple note from a brave waitress. His business was still successful, his penthouse was still luxurious, and his bank account was still substantial. But now he had something more valuable than any of those things. He had purpose. He had connection. He had the joy that comes from using his blessings to bless others. And every Tuesday night, he still went to Giuseppe's for seafood risotto with extra Parmesan. But now he ate with the knowledge that the best investments aren't always made in boardrooms or stock markets. Sometimes they're made in the heart of a community, one child at a time. Sometimes they start with nothing more than a folded piece of paper and the courage to believe that dreams can come true. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, they begin with a kind waitress who sees past our wealth to the person we used to be and challenges us to become the person we were always meant to become. So what did you think of this incredible story of how a simple note changed 2 lives forever? Did Jasmine's courage inspire you as much as it inspired Marcus? And what about Marcus? Do you think more wealthy people should follow his example and invest directly in their communities? Sometimes the smallest acts of bravery can create the biggest changes in the world. Jasmine could have just served Marcus his meal and let him leave, but instead she took a chance that transformed not just her own life, but the lives of hundreds of children in her neighborhood. This story reminds us that success isn't just about what we achieve for ourselves, but about what we do to lift others up along the way. Whether you're a billionaire or someone working 2 jobs to pay the rent, we all have the power to make a difference in someone else's life. What would you have done if you were in Jasmine's shoes? Would you have had the courage to write that note? And if you were Marcus, would you have responded the way he did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what this story meant to you. And if you enjoyed this tale of unexpected kindness and second chances, make sure to subscribe to the Beyond Yesterday YouTube channel for more inspiring stories that remind us of the good that still exists in our world. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss a story that could change the way you see the world. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that show us what's possible when ordinary people do extraordinary things. Thanks for watching, and remember, you never know when your small act of courage might change someone's life forever.